We begin. On the continent of Elyos, 1,000 years after the fell dragon, Sombron, was defeated and sealed away by the divine dragon matriarch, Lumera, just before her daughter, the divine dragon Alir, also known as the Divine One, was gravely wounded during the battle and placed into a slumber to recover. Alir finally awakens from her 1,000-year sleep, during which she lost all of her memories, on the Somniel, a fortress built on a floating island located above the holy land of Lethos, in the center of Elyos, ruled over by Lumera from Lethos Castle, where the stewards assigned to watch over Alir escort her to. Just before reaching the castle, the group encounters undead soldiers known as the Corrupted, which they're forced to fight, when suddenly the ring that Alir's been wearing since before her hibernation calls out to her, reminding her that it houses an emblem, a spirit of a legendary hero from another world, named Marth. Alir recalls that Marth's one of 12 total emblems in Elyos, and instinctively prays while reciting an invocation to summon him from the emblem ring, allowing him to assist her in battling against the Corrupted by giving him physical form, along with the ability to engage, or fuse together with him into a single, more powerful entity. Lumera arrives in her dragon form to eliminate the last wave of Corrupted, afterward reverting to her human form and reuniting with Alir, before explaining to her that Elyos is made up of 4 realms which currently surround Lethos, home of divine dragons: Firene, Kingdom of Abundance; Brodia, Kingdom of Might; Aluja, Kingdom of Knowledge; and Solm, Queendom of Freedom, with Gradlon, domain of the Fell Dragon, formerly occupying the space between Lethos and the realms before it was sunk beneath the ocean. During the war, 1,000 years ago, Sombron suddenly attacked the peaceful lands of Elyos with his Corrupted, created using his dark magic to revive corpses, causing the warriors of the Elyos nations to unite against him, calling upon the 12 emblems to assist them in defeating and imprisoning him. However, Lumera senses Sombron's resurrection, due to the binding placed upon him weakening over time, which is further confirmed by the reappearance of the Corrupted. Lumera escorts Alir to the Ring Vault, where 5 other rings are enshrined: Sigurd, the Holy Knight; Leif, the Sage Lord; Erica and Ephraim, the Azure Twins; Lucina, the Exalt Princess; and Byleth, the Instructor, which, in addition to Marth, the Hero King, totals 6 rings guarded by the Divine Dragons, with the remaining 6 entrusted to the other countries of Elyos: Celica, the Caring Princess; Roy, the Young Lion; Lyn, the Lady of the Plains; Ike, the Radiant Hero; Micaiah, the Dawn Maiden; and Corin, the Crux of Fate. Once every 1,000 years, when all 12 rings are gathered together, the emblems grant world-altering power to their wielder, necessitating them being spread throughout Elyos, in order to ensure that they're not stolen for nefarious purposes. The Divine Dragons travel across the continent every 1,000 years to collect them and use their power to ensure peace and prosperity throughout the land, including sealing away Sombron 1,000 years ago, but with his recent resurrection, comes the risk that he'll gather all the rings first, and use their power for evil. The castle's suddenly attacked by the Illusion army, who are seeking to revive Sombron, and manage to steal 4 rings, before Alfred, the Prince of Firene, arrives with his retainers to assist Alir and her stewards in the battle, which ends with Lumera sacrificing herself to protect Alir from a mysterious sorceress's attack. After Lumera's death, Alir resolves to take up her mantle as the Divine Dragon Protector of Elyos, and together with her companions, she ventures out into the continent to assist Firene and Brodia against attacks from Aluja, recovering additional rings in the process. After King Morian of Brodia is injured in combat and abducted by King Hyacinth of Aluja, using a dark emblem created by Sombron's corruption of a ring, with the goal of offering his sovereign blood to Sombron, which is required to further empower him, Alir joins forces with Morian's son, Prince Diamant of Brodia, to pursue them into Aluja. While en route, the group encounters Vale, a mysterious girl who assists Alir by battling the Corrupted and directing her group to Destinia Cathedral, where Morian was taken. Arriving at the cathedral and confronting Hyacinth, Alir's group discovers that they're too late to save Morian, who's been turned into a Corrupted after having his blood drained and given to Sombron, restoring his power, before he proceeds to transform into his dragon form and devour Hyacinth, killing him and gaining additional power from his sovereign blood. The mysterious sorceress who killed Lumera reappears, and is revealed to be Vale, who's Sombron's daughter, responsible for creating the recent Corrupted, and has been working to revive Sombron with a sect of his followers known as the Four Hounds: Zephia, a mage dragon who leads the group; Gris, a violent, masochistic mage; Marnie, a moody, confident, and rude, heavily armored soldier who yearns for approval, and Mavir, a chivalrous, honest, and polite knight devoted to Veil's protection. Veil then uses the Draconic Time Crystal, a special gemstone imbued with the power to rewind time, to steal all 6 of the rings Alir's groups acquired so far from them, giving them to Sombron, who recites their invocations himself, corrupting them with his fell power. Without their rings, Alir's groups forced to flee for their lives, while being chased after by Veil, the Hounds, and the Corrupted. Suddenly, Princess Ivy of Elusia and her 2 retainers arrive and assist Alir, stealing the time crystal from Veil along with 2 rings, one which was entrusted to Elusia, and another which Elusia recently stole from Lumera, giving them to Alir before joining her forces and escaping. Afterward, Alir's group journeys to the Queendom of Solm to regroup by recruiting more allies and acquiring additional rings, where they meet Princess Timera of Solm. Traveling back to Firene after learning that Illusion warships are headed there, they again encounter Veil and the Hounds, learning that Veil's being controlled by Sombron's power, resulting in an evil split personality which she was unaware of. After Alir's group battles and defeats them, Veil temporarily breaks free of Sombron's control, regaining her true self, and returning another ring to Alir before being taken away by the Hounds. Pursuing the Hounds back to Elusia, Alir's group arrives at Elusia Castle to find it empty, except for Gris, whom they defeat and take back another ring from. After Alir prays while reciting an invocation to cleanse the emblem of fell energy and re-summon it, Gris reveals that emblems are summoned through prayer by divine dragons, and through invocations by fell dragons, meaning that Alir is actually a fell dragon, and therefore another child of Sombron. Sigurd confirms this, before explaining that in the war 1,000 years ago, Alir rebelled against Sombron, allying with Lumera, who became her adoptive mother when the two grew close, and after Alir was mortally wounded while defeating Sombron, Lumera placed her into her long slumber, while steadily transferring her own divine dragon powers into her to heal her, shortening Lumera's life to grant Alir the abilities necessary to succeed her as the next divine dragon. Though Alir's hair and eyes were originally completely red, they're now half red, half blue, indicating that she's become half fell dragon, half divine dragon, explaining why she instinctively uses both invocation and prayer to summon emblems, and why they aren't corrupted upon her summoning them, as she chooses to allow them to retain their free will. Overhearing this, and realizing that it means Alir is Veil's sister, Mavir and Marnie defect to Alir's side in order to help her save Veil from Sombron, who's created an enchanted helmet to strengthen his control over her. They warn Alir that Sombron intends to invade Lithos and destroy the Divine Dragon Shard, a crystal teeming with divine energy that also bestows life to all of Lithos, in order to revive his own land of Gradlon, from which he can take over not just Elyos, but other worlds as well. Hurrying to Lithos Castle, Alir's forced to confront Veil again, but Marnie sacrifices herself to damage the helmet controlling her, afterward being killed by Zephia, but resulting in Veil being temporarily restored to her true self after battling Alir, leading Sombron to attack Veil, who Alir then sacrifices herself to protect. With Alir dead, Sombron takes her rings, and with all 12 now finally in his possession, forces them to bestow their 1,000-year power onto him, empowering him enough to restore Gradlon from the depths of the ocean and regain control over Veil, who summons Corrupted to attack Alir's companions. Meanwhile, Alir's spirit meets Veil's in the afterlife, and she convinces Veil to fight against Sombron's control in order to retake her own body, and then use her power to revive Alir as a Corrupted. Veil succeeds in destroying the helmet, permanently banishing her split personality before reviving the corrupted Alir, allowing her to retain her sanity and use the last of her power to reactivate the discarded rings, just before her body begins to crumble away from the strain. However, the 12 emblems, inspired by Alir's desire to keep fighting to save the world, unanimously agree to sacrifice the vast majority of their power to perform their secret miracle, which revives her as the 13th emblem, Alir, the Connector, also known as the Fire Emblem, removing all corruption from and fully healing her physical body, while also granting her a spiritual, purely divine dragon form linked to a ring which Lumera created for her, containing more of her power. After regrouping, Alir's team witnesses a portal opening in the sky above them, which will allow Sombron to travel to and invade other worlds, and learns that a barrier's covering Gradlon, requiring them to destroy 3 fell dragon shards located throughout it, in order to break the barrier and stop him. After defeating Zephyia and Gris at the first shard's location and breaking it, Zephyia decides to attempt to make amends just before she and Gris die, by giving Alir's group an enchanted time crystal she created, which will allow them to reach the second shard, as it's currently deep under the ocean. Using the crystal, Alir's group is transported back in time 1,000 years, to the ancient war, when the shard was on land still above water, guarded by Alir's past, Fell Dragon self, forcing them to battle and defeat her, before destroying the shard and returning to the present, unwittingly leading to Alir and Lumera's original meeting, just afterward, being on friendly terms, instead of as enemies. Back in the present, Alir's group proceeds to the final shard, located in Gradlon Temple, guarded by Lumera, whom Sombrons revived as a corrupted. Alir's forced to battle the corrupted Lumera, and upon defeating her, she regains her sanity, allowing the two to have parting words as her body disintegrates. Sombron finishes opening the portal just as the barrier is destroyed, and as Alir's group prepares for their final confrontation with him, Marth reveals that closing the portal will cause a great distortion throughout Elyos, resulting in all emblems besides Alir ceasing to exist there. Regardless, Alir's group presses on, moving the Somniel itself to the portal and entering it, where they confront Sombron, who reveals he was exiled to Elyos from another world after his people lost a war there, where emblems and rings also exist, and his goal is to amass soldiers and territory, along with reactivating the Zero Emblem, or Emblem of Foundations, the emblem from his own ring who disappeared shortly after he arrived in Elyos, and returned to his homeworld, in order to exact revenge. After defeating Sombron in his human form, he changes into his dragon form, summoning the legendary villains from the emblem's home worlds as Dark Emblem reinforcements, linked to rings worn by his corrupted, which form a protective barrier around Sombron. A fierce battle ensues, ending with Alir's group defeating Sombron, who finds peace as he dies, and they return to the Somniel as the portal closes, bidding farewell to the emblems as they disappear. Afterward, Alir's companions return to their respective lands to help rebuild Elyos, while Alir succeeds Lumera as the new Divine Dragon Queen. As Alir's preparing for her coronation ceremony, the rings glow, revealing that they still retain some of their power, and Marth muses that Alir and the emblems may meet again someday.